Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. And if you've ever been so confused that your heart feels bruised, not broken, just tender from constant pressure, then maybe this will make sense. She was crying in the shower again. I could hear it through the tile. Not sobs, not loud. Just that soft, trembling whimper people make when they're trying not to be heard. So I did what any idiot husband does. I grabbed a towel, walked to the door, knocked once, and then I asked stupidly, "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. The water got louder, and after a long pause, her voice cut through like frost. "Please just give me space. That's it. That was my crime. I cared at the wrong time." I backed away. No fight. No guilt trip. I just stood in the hallway holding a towel that suddenly felt like a surrender flag. And it wasn't the first time either. A week before that, she recoiled when I touched her back in bed. 2 days ago, she snapped when I asked if she wanted to go to dinner. The night before, she told me she'd be working late and came home at 2 a.m. with glitter on her wrist. But a towel? A towel was too much. So I left it on the doorknob and walked downstairs. I sat on the couch, listened to the water run. My chest felt like it was holding back some unnamed animal. Then it hit me. She doesn't hate me. She just doesn't see me anymore. Not as a husband. Not as someone worth explaining things to. Not as someone whose touch meant safety. So the next morning, while she was still asleep, I got in my car and drove 3 hours in the wrong direction, to a town I'd never been to, checked into a motel that smelled like mildew and disappointment, and turned off my phone. No fight. No note. Just absence. And I thought that would be the end. But it turns out, disappearing wasn't the ending. It was the match. Because the moment she realized I was truly gone, she started to come undone. And what she did next, I never expected her to be the one falling apart. Took her 3 days. I watched the missed calls pile up from an old tablet I hadn't touched since 2021. 27 calls. For texts. No voicemails. Just empty pings from a woman who once couldn't go 3 hours without checking if I was okay. I didn't reply. I didn't even read the last text until the next morning. And it simply said, "Where did you go?" That line should have felt soft, like a plea. But all I could hear was the audacity. Where did I go? No apology. No explanation. Not even an acknowledgement that I'd been fading for months right in front of her. I didn't vanish because I was dramatic. I left because I felt invisible while standing 2 feet away from her every night. On the 4th day, my neighbor from across the street called me from his landline. Tom. The guy who once helped me fix a cracked hose in the dead of winter. He never calls. Never. He said, "Hey, Harris. Your wife's been out in the driveway for over an hour, just pacing." I could picture it. Her pacing in that robe she never wore in public, biting her lip like she always did when she couldn't control a situation. I didn't ask anything. I just thanked him, hung up, and turned off the tablet. I knew she'd start unraveling eventually. I just didn't expect it to be so fast. By the end of the week, she drove to my work. Twice. Told my supervisor it was urgent. Told our mailman I hadn't come home because of stress. Told her sister I was overreacting and acting unstable. It was like watching someone rewrite a story while holding the original in their hand. She finally got her answer the following Tuesday. That's when she walked into our house, found the envelope I left on the floor under the coffee table, and opened it. I didn't leave a letter, just a printout of the doorbell footage from the night she said she was at the fundraiser. The video clearly showed her getting dropped off by a man in a gray sedan, laughing, touching his arm, her lipstick still fresh. No confrontation, no caption, just the truth. And that's when she snapped. She didn't cry. She didn't call. She didn't send some poetic message of regret. Instead, she did something worse, something calculated. And that's when I realized I'd been sleeping next to a storm I never saw coming. The next day, I got an email from my bank titled, "Recent access from an unknown device." I opened it and froze. Someone had reset the login using an old backup email I hadn't touched since college. One I'd long forgotten was still tied to our joint account. I already knew who it was. The same person who once needed my help to reset her Netflix password suddenly became a digital ninja when it came to finances. When I logged in, nearly half the account was gone. No notes, no transfer memos, just vanished. And all I could think was, she's not even trying to lie anymore. I didn't call her. I didn't shout. Honestly, I didn't even feel angry. I felt embarrassed, like I'd underestimated the quiet cruelty of someone who used to sleep with her head on my chest. The same woman who once cried watching me ice my bad knee now used that knee as her steps tool to climb out of our life. She wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to erase me entirely. Later that night, I called my insurance company to verify our car policy. That's when the agent informed me she'd already called 2 days prior and asked to remove me from the paperwork. Her excuse? He's out of town indefinitely. That line felt like a slap made of paper. I asked the agent to freeze all changes, and they agreed, but it didn't matter. The message was already loud and clear. She'd skipped straight over denial and bargaining. She went straight to deletion. I tried to eat. Couldn't. I tried to sleep. Couldn't. I sat in that motel, staring at the popcorn ceiling, wondering how many other husbands had watched their marriages disintegrate so cleanly it felt like they were never real to begin with. I guess I always thought heartbreak would come with screaming, pleading, doors slammed and regrets thrown like knives. But this was cold warfare. And then came the message that shattered it all. A single email, titled, "You don't get to ghost me." It was short, just 3 lines. Whatever narrative you're building in your head, it's wrong. I have nothing to apologize for. If you want to be childish, I'll treat you like a child. I read it 5 times. The language wasn't angry. It was surgical, precise, like someone peeling back your skin just to prove they can. And that was when I realized something terrifying. She wasn't unraveling because she missed me. She was unraveling because she couldn't control the story anymore. Because for once I held the silence. And silence, to her, was a weapon she never imagined I'd learn to use. It was supposed to be anonymous. That's the whole reason I drove hours out, used cash at gas stations, stayed in a motel that reeked of bleach and damp curtains. I needed distance. I needed time. But more than that, I needed to not be found. So when I pulled into the parking lot of the coffee shop 3 blocks from the motel, same spot I'd been using for Wi-Fi and quiet, and saw her car already parked there, something inside me went ice cold. She wasn't alone. She was sitting outside at one of the patio tables, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize, sunglasses too big for her face, and across from her was a woman I barely knew. One of her coworkers, I think. Someone she used to gossip about for dating supervisors. They didn't look like they were just grabbing coffee. They looked like they were waiting. And sure enough, the moment I stepped inside, the coworker stood up and walked past me. Didn't say a word, didn't even glance. And then Emery stood, like she'd been rehearsing. Like this wasn't a coincidence, it was an ambush. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just walked in behind me and said my name like it was an apology. "Harris?" I didn't respond. I just stood near the napkin dispenser, fists clenched in my hoodie pockets, heart pounding so hard I was sure the barista could hear it. Then she said something that didn't match her voice, didn't match the situation, or the version of her I had just uncovered over the last few days. "I forgive you." I turned, stunned. "You forgive me?" She tilted her head like I was the one being absurd. "I know this has been hard. I shouldn't have let it get this far. But you disappearing like that, you made a mess." I laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like it's breaking. "You emptied our account. That was to protect our assets in case you spiraled. You weren't responding. You left no warning. That's not how adults handle conflict, Harris." I had no words. None. Just stood there blinking at a woman who had rewritten the story so masterfully. She truly believed her own script. And then she pulled something from her bag and slid it across the counter toward me. A neatly folded piece of paper. "I've already spoken with a therapist. We can start next week. But you'll need to move back in before that. Otherwise they won't take us as a couple." I didn't touch the paper. I just stared at it, then at her. The calm, the control, the complete absence of remorse. She thought therapy would fix it. or at least make it look fixable from the outside. But I wasn't broken. I was done. By the time I returned to the motel, there were 3 new voicemails waiting. Not from Emery, but from people I hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin Adam, who lives 2 states away, left one that started with, "Hey man, heard some stuff. Just checking in. You all right?" Then there was my old coworker Jenna, who hadn't texted me in 4 years, now asking, "You okay?" Emery reached out, said you were going through something rough. Even my mother, my own mother, who Emery barely tolerated, sent a confused message asking why I was ignoring my wife when she was trying so hard to save the marriage. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to rewrite the story for me anymore. She was distributing a version of events, a curated narrative, polished and prepackaged, and she was putting it into the hands of anyone who had ever known us. And in this version, I was the fragile one, the unstable one, the man who cracked under pressure and vanished like a coward. I stared at my reflection in the motel mirror and wondered what I looked like to everyone else now. Because to me, I looked hollow. Not broken, just emptied out. Like someone who'd stopped asking for answers and started getting used to silence. Later that night, I walked to the diner across the street. Ordered coffee I didn't want and a slice of pie I wouldn't touch. And then, just before closing, someone slid into the booth across from me. It was her coworker, the one from earlier. She didn't introduce herself, didn't even apologize for earlier. She just placed her phone on the table, screen up, recording paused at a familiar clip, our front porch camera. The same clip I'd left printed out under the table in the living room. "I wasn't supposed to show you this," she said. She sent it to me by accident. I tapped play. It was a recording from the same night as the porch footage, but from inside the house. Emery, talking on speakerphone to someone I couldn't quite make out, laughing, not crying, and saying something that made my stomach twist. He still thinks I'm going to explain everything, like I owe him a breakdown of why I'm done. I don't owe him closure. I just need him out. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the screen until the recording ended. The coworker stood up, hesitated, then said something under her breath before leaving. "I thought you should know. You were never crazy." And that's when I realized something even worse than betrayal. I had been fighting to fix something that was never broken. It was just designed that way. The next morning, I checked out of the motel. Not because I had somewhere to go, but because staying felt like offering her a target. If Emery had managed to track me down once, she could do it again. And judging by the voicemail she left that night, 22 seconds of calm concern layered with not-so-subtle guilt trips, I knew she wasn't giving up. Not because she wanted me back, but because she couldn't stand not having the final word. I drove aimlessly for hours before settling in a small rental cabin near the river. It was off-season and half the place was shut down. Perfect for disappearing. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not even Tom, the neighbor. I left the tablet turned off and kept my phone in airplane mode. For the first time in weeks, I felt invisible by choice. But Emery wasn't done. 2 days later, the cabin manager knocked on my door and handed me a box. "Delivery for you," he said, eyeing me like I just ruined his quiet week. The box was wrapped in soft white paper, with a silver ribbon tied so tightly it looked machine-done. Inside, a bouquet of wildflowers. Not roses, not lilies. Wildflowers, the same kind she said looked cheap the one time I brought them home years ago. And the card? It wasn't addressed to me. It was signed, "Can't wait to see you again. You were amazing last night. D." At first, I thought she'd sent the wrong box to the wrong man. But no, the shipping label had my name, my temporary alias I used for the cabin. She'd known exactly where to send it. She wanted me to see it, to feel it. I don't know who D is, and I don't think I care anymore, because this wasn't about love, or closure, or confusion. This was war, a silent one, the kind that makes you question your sanity, your value, your memories. She wasn't reaching out to heal. She was reaching out to hurt, carefully, elegantly, in a way that didn't look like malice unless you knew her well enough to see the cracks behind the charm. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring out into the woods like something might come explain it all to me. Maybe I was still hoping she'd call and confess it was all a mistake. But all I got was stillness. And somewhere in that silence, I understood something that gutted me to my core. She didn't want me back. She just didn't want to look like the one who was left. I didn't tell her my dad had passed. That was intentional. He and I weren't close. Too many years, too many cold dinners and unfinished apologies between us. But even then, a part of me wanted to say goodbye without the weight of performance. I didn't want to be consoled. I didn't want a photo montage. I wanted to grieve quietly, alone, with no one asking if I was holding up okay. So when she showed up at the funeral, dressed in all black, standing just inside the chapel doors with a delicate tear running down her cheek, I felt something tighten in my chest that had nothing to do with loss. No one had invited her. My aunt leaned in and whispered. She said she was still family, that you'd want her here. I didn't respond. I just stared across the room at the woman who had turned my silence into ammunition, my absence into her alibi. And then she made her move. After the service, while people lined up to pay respects to a man who never really opened himself up to anyone, Emery pulled my cousin aside, the same one she texted after I vanished. I saw her whisper something, slip him a small envelope, and walk out like she was the widow. Curiosity got the better of him. He opened it right there. Inside was a printed screenshot of an old message I'd sent Emery during our first year of marriage. Something harmless. A confession about how I felt anxious, like I wasn't good enough for her. She had printed it, highlighted it, annotated the bottom. He was always unstable. I don't know what shocked me more, the cruelty or the precision. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She planted quiet seeds to make sure, no matter how far I ran, the version of me she created would beat me to every door. And the scariest part? It was working. People who once knew me as dependable, soft-spoken Harris were starting to look at me like I was some fragile ghost of myself, like I'd finally cracked, and she'd just been protecting herself from the inevitable. Later that night, I sat in my rental car in the church parking lot and stared at the steering wheel, my fingers gripping the leather like it could somehow ground me. And I finally said something out loud I hadn't admitted to myself yet. She's not trying to get me back. She's trying to erase the version of me that ever existed in her life. That realization hit harder than her betrayal. Because you can walk away from a person, but when they start rewriting your identity, turning you into a shadow of their guilt, what exactly are you left with? I didn't respond to the stunt at the funeral. I didn't reach out, or confront, or defend myself. I let it hang in the air, unanswered, like a door left slightly open, not worth closing anymore. That was the last time I saw Emery in person. In the weeks that followed, she sent a few more messages, some disguised as apologies, some thinly veiled attempts to bait me into reacting. I didn't take any of them. I let silence be my shield. I realized something powerful in all of this. For people like her, chaos is oxygen. But for people like me, stillness is survival. I deleted the old videos. Not to forget, but because I no longer needed proof. I lived it. I survived it. And sometimes, surviving is the loudest statement you can make. I moved again. This time not out of fear but freedom. Found a small town where nobody knew her name, and more importantly, nobody knew mine. I started working at a local hardware store. Nothing glamorous, but it feels real. The kind of job where people say thank you and mean it. I've stopped explaining the past. If someone asks why I left the city, I just say, it was time. No one pushes. No one pries. And for the first time in years, I sleep without needing to brace myself. I keep one photo. Just one. Not of her, but of me taken accidentally in the motel mirror that first week I vanished. I look wrecked, pale, unshaven. But there's a look in my eyes that I didn't recognize until recently. It wasn't weakness. It was rebirth. Emery might still be spinning her version of things, and maybe some people will always believe her. But I've stopped chasing the need to be understood by everyone. Because healing isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just knowing you're no longer waiting for an apology that'll never come. And that's where I'll leave it. I didn't win. I didn't lose, but I walked away. And walking away without bitterness is how I took my life back. Thanks for watching this story here on Reddit Confessions. Have you ever witnessed someone try to rewrite reality to avoid accountability? Or maybe you know a historical event where truth was twisted until someone brave enough stood up. Drop your thoughts and stories in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life confessions.